for being here. I'm so glad it stopped raining. It's a good night. So let's jump in right at the epic love story of Shakuntala and Dushyanta. I think it really is interwoven at so many different levels through the book. And we'll just ease in. So which came first, the desire to retell the story in a contemporary way or the idea for the book?
I will have Ava answer that question. So when I was about a junior in high school, I was doing English homework for doing Shakespeare, and I was having my mom help me, and she said, "Do you know any Indian myths and Indian love stories?" And I was like, "No, we don't learn about that in school." So we found it interesting that there are so many retellings of Greek myths, yet there aren't really any retellings of Indian myths, yet there's so many different love stories and legends in India. So we did some research and we came across a story that really connected with us, which is the story of Shakuntala. And it's a classic love story that we thought would be fun to retell in a modern way for kids my age. So it's about a young girl who falls in love and forgets who she is, and until she remembers who she is, the love of her life doesn't remember her. So it's kind of about discovering yourself and learning to love yourself first so that other people can love you as well.
That was a great summary. It's a lot packed into, yeah, that was great. So Rachel, your father immigrated to America from India, and your mother is from the Netherlands. When you were growing up, did they pass down pieces of their heritage to you through myths or food, or how was that in your home?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think for immigrants, like my father was, it's difficult, especially if you come from poverty, to feel like you're earning a living, taking care of your family, and integrating into America. And so for myself and what I learned later, a lot of my friends, all of those traditions aren't necessarily passed down because they want us to be so American. And so as an adult, I found myself teaching my daughters, teaching myself about our culture. And then on the other hand, it's so very ingrained from the day that I'm born. We have Indian food every single day, and just in the way that I was brought up, where you respect your elders no matter what. So those types of things are definitely ingrained within me, but as far as teaching the language or other more obvious ways of communicating or educating the culture, I think the number one priority for many immigrants is making sure their children survive and succeed in America. So it's a bit of a loss, but we could always teach ourselves as well.
Absolutely. And as you're rediscovering or coming back, with some of that stuff from your parents' background in your childhood, have you passed it on to your daughters?
Well, that's how the book, like Ava described, came about. So, just realizing that we all know Romeo and Juliet and different Shakespeare plays, but we don't know any of the epic and absolutely exquisite love stories and mythology from India. And what started as a love story from myself to Ava and wanting her to really respect and appreciate what makes her so beautiful on the inside and outside became a book, because I have a close friend that's a literary agent, and so we took it to her and she loved the idea. But originally it just started from mother to daughter.
That's beautiful. That's great. So the book opens up with Rhea struggling with the transition from high school to college. One passage that stood out to me was when she described how the last several years of her life she'd had almost this job that was to do well in school, to get accepted to a top college, and then once it happened, it was mission accomplished and she kind of was lost and thrown into this existential crisis. Ava, as a recent high school graduate, were those feelings you could relate to?
Yeah, so that part of the story was definitely drawn from personal experience, because being a junior and a senior in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my whole life, like what I wanted to major in college, if I even wanted to go to college. So it definitely was something that all my friends and I were going through and feeling. And I think that I created a character in her that I'd like to live myself, who is adventurous and follows her heart.
So in contrast to Rhea, whose family gives her the freedom to decide what she wants to do, is her cousin Anandi, who kind of has this predetermined path. Everyone in her family is a lawyer, and that's what she's going to do, and they're not even going to discuss it. So Rachel, I was wondering if you grew up in an environment that was more like Rhea or Anandi, and how, in whichever environment that was, you came to know that fashion was your path.
So my father was a sociologist, a professor at a college in Northern California, and although he very much respects all of the traditional professional career paths that many Indian parents do, doctors, lawyers, dentists, accountants, because of his sociology background, he was very different and accepting and ultimately very, very proud. But it was interesting, come time for college, I have an older brother, and so he went off and he did all the right things, got scholarships, but I was very content to stay at home, work at the mall where I was working, and just graduate and not go to college. And he applied to college for me without me knowing, to a very small Seventh-day Adventist school in Washington, D.C., where he had gone. And I didn't want to go, so I got in, but I didn't want to go, so he packed my bags for me, got on the airplane with me, and made me go. And of course, at the time, I was not happy. Probably didn't treat him that well. And yet, I can honestly say it's the best thing that anyone has ever done for me. And just the idea of travel, the idea of all of those experiences that you get living in a dorm and being on the East Coast after having lived on the West Coast for 17 years. So my dad is an exceptionally different type of Indian parent, although he's very, very strict. And my mother worked in the same job for almost 40 years. So they are the type of parents that want you to be happy, but consider happiness the success, not the other way around.
That's a good lead into my next question for Ava, which is, with all of the talents and interests you clearly already have at such a young age, do you feel that you need to, pick that major and find success in a career quickly, or do you think that you're going to explore a lot of things and do many things?
I mean, I definitely think I'm going to explore a lot of things. When choosing my major for college, I'm a sociology major, like my grandpa was. My mom and my uncle both told me to pick a major that I was going to enjoy the classes, because I'm not very good at math or science, so I knew I didn't want to major in anything that had to do with that. So I decided to major in something that I would enjoy the classes for and that I would look forward to going to every day. And everybody always asks me, what do you want to do with sociology? Like, do you want to be a professor? And I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, I'm just going to figure it out and see kind of where that takes me, because sociology is so broad and it can help in so many different aspects of life. So
that's true. I'd say the majority of my current job, 75% of it is sociology and psychology, dealing with employees.
Yeah, managing people. Seriously. And no one does what their major was.
Yeah,
I mean, I studied political science and art history, and I write about fashion. I think your work experience also kind of leads you towards what you actually enjoy doing. Yeah. The first 5 to 10 years out of college are just figuring out what you love to do.
Right.
So in the book, Rhea discovers that her grandmother's dream evolved, and that upsets her. She has this very strong reaction to finding out that her grandmother ended up doing different things than she started out. And she has this quote that I think kind of embodies that. She said, when you wanted more than one thing, one of them always had to be more important than the other. So this got me thinking about trade-offs. And Rachel, you've been very candid about being a working mother and kind of the impossibility of having it all, and it's just making a lot of choices. So I'm wondering how you decide what the right choice is, and just what advice you would have for women trying to balance family and career.
Yeah, I think that's the internal, or one of the internal questions that we grapple with, and we feel like we rarely get right. is how much do you give and how much do you keep for yourself? And that's part of what Rhea's grandmother, or what she felt Rhea's grandmother had given up on. And that disappointment of realizing that the person that you've always admired and looked up to and felt was invincible has made very human decisions. So yes, what I say is that you cannot do everything all at once, but you can do one thing at a time quite good, especially if you enjoy it and if you like it, and you are authentic about it. But yes, so Rhea, as a teenager, discovered that her grandmother was not perfect, but that realization then led to a lot of self-love, I think.
So in fiction, writers are encouraged to write what they know. And in 96 Words for Love, the most obvious similarity is between Ava and Rhea. You're even the model on the cover posing as Rhea. And I'm wondering, when you were writing the book, did you ever feel inhibited by the fear that people would confuse you with her and her choices with your choices? And how did you kind of get around that? And are there any major differences you would like to point out between you and Rhea?
I think that having the character so close to the same struggles that I was going through helped more than it didn't help. So it made it a good kind of jumping off point for me, and I think for my mom as well. And it made it more easy to make it kind of realistic and authentic, and I think that by doing so it makes it more relatable to everybody else reading it. So I think that it mostly helped having me and her going through the same types of things, because we can really pick off of the way I was feeling, and if my mom put something in the book that I was like, no, like that doesn't sound right, that doesn't sound like how I feel, that it could just change right then and there.
Yeah. I think another parallel readers might be likely to draw is that of Rachel as Rhea's mother. And it got me thinking about perspective, because it's hard to kind of separate your identity from actually being a mother, especially when you're writing the book with your daughter. Was it hard to step into the teenage lead character's shoes? Did you find yourself wanting to mother her or change her decisions, or did she maybe benefit from your life experience and being able to do the things that you didn't have a chance to do?
That's actually exactly how I felt. So when it was my turn to write in Rhea's voice, I usually made her probably a little more advanced thought-wise than she should have been, because I wanted to mother her even while writing her. And that's where Ava's kind of genuine voice came through and said, absolutely not. That's not at all what we do or how we would think about it. In writing Rhea's mother, I purposely tried to keep her role very, very small to keep myself out of it, because I would want to kind of make her this woman that I aspired to be, and I did not want to have Rhea's mother at all be a catalyst in this story at all.
Interesting. That's an interesting choice. Ava, as you have now experienced, writing a book is a labor of love, and I imagine you came to love your main character and maybe feel kind of maternal towards her. Did writing this book make you maybe more empathetic to your own mother and what it's like to to love and, you know, kind of foster this being?
Yeah, it definitely gave me a perspective that I didn't really have before on myself and kind of how my mom must feel. But I also have a 10-year-old sister who I'm often babysitting and watching grow up, and she kind of feels like my kid sometimes. So I kind of have that dynamic and relationship with my sister as well, but yeah, it definitely gave me some respect for you, big girl.
So 96 Words for Love handles a lot of major coming-of-age topics, and you do it in a really elegant, honest, and non-judgmental way. I felt like it was all very authentic, and yeah, that really resonated with me. So how did you decide which of these kind of tough topics to tackle, and did the mother-daughter dynamic ever make it uncomfortable during the writing process? You're talking about kind of intimate things, and how did you navigate around that?
Well, one of the things that gets brought up and sort of weaved into this story is the topic of sex trafficking. And so my mom and I went to India when I was probably 16, and at the time of writing this I was 17 and 18. So when we were in India, we visited a center for girls who were rescued from sex trafficking, and we got to interact with girls who were just my age or even younger, and who had babies, and it was just really eye-opening for me to process and to kind of realize is a reality for some girls. And so we kind of felt that that was necessary to put in the books, because if I hadn't gone to see that, I wouldn't really know about it. And so I know a lot of my friends don't really even know that that happens. Well, they know that it happens, but it's just hard to kind of believe that it's real.
It's abstract.
Yeah.
You just read it.
Yeah. So that's why some of the proceeds from the book go to the actual girls that we met from the center. And I think that girls my age reading this will kind of see it, and it'll open their eyes to that whole different world that they probably don't know anything about, and hopefully will inspire them to research about it and to learn more about it.
Yeah, it was interesting. Some of the topics that we wrote about, I wanted to maybe just touch on, like the young couple, and how soon and when and in what way they decided to get physical. Ava was really kind of brave and just wanted to jump into it and write that in detail, whereas if I were writing it by myself, I would not have known that that's what her friend group or age would even want to read about. So those things were all pretty new to me and pretty eye-opening, and that's the collaboration.
Yeah, that's great. Another brave topic that the book touched on in an unintimidating way was casual racism. And I'm speaking specifically about the character Devin, who, she's not vilified, but she is someone who accidentally says racially offensive things a lot. As multiracial women, how do you handle the Devins of the world, and why was it important to include a character like her in the book?
It happens so often, and it happens from earliest memory to current life, and it happens in ways that are jokes and very light with people that you love and that you're close with, and that you find are to be friends. And then obviously it happens with people that greatly dislike you as well, just based on how you look before getting to know you. And so I thought that the sex trafficking, like Ava mentions, should probably be the heaviest thing in this YA young adult novel. But at the same time, I didn't want to ignore what brown girls go through, and that is being the oddball out, usually. Being the one that is sometimes the token in the room, or the, among the 10% of the population in the room. And we wanted to do it in a light way, very specifically. And so we tried to show the humor in it, and we tried to show that really good people with good intentions can still come across entirely wrong.
Yes, and I think by keeping her light, people maybe will recognize some of their own actions in her more than if she was kind of this extreme.
Yes,
yeah.
And no one's extreme. That I mean, unless you are, one of those rare souls. We all have that human condition where we make mistakes, and just because in this case it was a Caucasian person making those mistakes, we make them as well, obviously. But the lightness was quite important to me for this subject.
Yeah. So this is another good lead into my next question, which is about self-compassion and forgiveness. Kind of together, they kind of struck me as a theme in the book. Rhea is, kind of an overachiever, and she's struggling with just the idea of making a misstep after high school, choosing the wrong major, the wrong career. And then there's also the character who has come to the ashram in part to atone for a big mistake that he's made on social media. So Ava, growing up with social media, do you think that there is I mean, this is an obvious one, more pressure to seem like you're having a perfect life. But the flip side of that is it harder to make mistakes when they're kind of permanently out there on social media and everyone makes mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely crazy having everybody be able to see what's going on in your life, and it's definitely this like added pressure of having to seem like you're having all this fun and seem like your life is perfect and you're so happy. But I feel like now people on social media are starting to be more brave and show, you know, their insecurities and not have to edit every single photo to make sure that you look perfect and stuff like that. And so I hope that that's a trend that continues in social media. But yeah, definitely even having a social media kind of puts your own spotlight on you, even if you're not famous or whatever. Like just having your own Instagram kind of puts your own spotlight on you and can show everybody, or is meant to show everybody, that you're this perfect person who has this perfect life and perfect friends and that you look perfect.
The idea of forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, was one that was really important for me. Unfortunately, I don't think you learn it until you're an adult, and it's one of the most freeing things that can provide so much peace. So I wanted that in there very much for Ava's age group. And Deepak Chopra says that you forgive for peace, for yourself, not necessarily for because the other deserves it. And it's the same for yourself. You must forgive yourself for peace. And that idea that we all make mistakes and we're all human, that is one of the quickest ways out of it.
Absolutely. So when you are looking to find peace, what are some things you all do? Have you been to an ashram yourself? And
well, after all of this research to find, you know, it's quite difficult to create an ashram that a young person living a somewhat privileged life actually wants to go to by themselves.
It's very glamorous one that she visited.
That was intentional because we had to make it, you know, how is this kid leaving all of her friends, and we did find some in northern India that kind of fit that bill, and next month I am going to one that I have not yet been.
That's very exciting. So you'll have to do the sequel.
Exactly.
Even if not in an ashram, where do you go in your everyday life to find peace and kind of put yourself back on the path when you're feeling a little lost?
Something that I like to do is just to listen to music. It helps me to calm down, and I just love music in general, playing the piano. So yeah, I would just say kind of relaxing in bed and listening to music is what helps me.
And for me, I would say nature. Living in Manhattan for 19 years, you realize the older you get how important it is, at least for me. And in nature is meditation, in nature is God. For me, it's so important to give that to my kids. So Ava got it a little bit later in life, around 15, 16. She got some nature when we moved to California. And my little one has had it for a little bit longer, but it's a balance.
Absolutely. I thought the scenes where Ray was struggling to focus her mind while meditating felt very familiar to me when I've tried a few times, very unsuccessfully, but I thought that was a very authentic...
It can be difficult to get there.
Yes, so keep practicing. So I think we can kind of just want to pull it back in before we open up questions, but I found in an old bio of you and a press release from something with the Rachel Roy brand years ago, this quote. It said, "Rachel Roy designs to inspire women to feel smart, confident, and individual." And that same ethos I felt really kind of infused the book.
But good, yeah. So it's consistent, at least.
But I would love to hear in your own words, from both of you, kind of what you're hoping that people take from 96 Words for Love.
I think that the universal message in 96 Words for Love is to not be afraid of the failure and adventure that being on your own brings. So I hope that readers can kind of see her path and her journey and realize that it's okay to make mistakes and to try new things and to figure out kind of what path you're supposed to take.
Very good. And for me, it's twofold. I'm hoping that readers, if they don't already know about India, become quite inspired at its exquisite beauty and all that it has to offer. I hope that they want to research more Indian mythology. And the point of both the original myth and our remake of it is that without self-love, it's impossible to have any other type of love.
That's great.
Hi.
Yeah, how did I'm curious about the joint writing. Did you guys divide up sections? You divide up characters? Did one really do more of the original writing and another one played editor role? So.
Yep, it's not easy. Lots of deadlines because I have other deadlines with other work, and sometimes it was like pulling teeth to get anytime you have to be creative by 3 o'clock, right? That's hard for anybody, but it's hard for two people to merge their creativity together. So we took it in turns. I can let you explain.
So we kind of figured out what the storyline was going to be, and once we were both happy and comfortable with it, we divided up by her writing a chapter, then me writing a chapter, and then we kind of edited each other's together until it sounded like one voice that was authentic.
So you were both writing all the characters?
Yes.
We both wrote all of the characters, yes. Some she really excelled at, and I could take a back seat. Others, like Devin, I wanted to make sure we were keeping the offensiveness of Devin light enough. But yes, where I lacked, Ava definitely picked up in all of the nuance of how these young people really interact with each other. So. Yeah, at the time we didn't know if we could actually finish this, because it is difficult.
Are there plans to do a sequel?
I hope so. Okay. I hope so. There's so many beautiful love stories that are just so epic, and material's all there. Yeah. And it's so much fun for me, so hopefully it does well, and we can. I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very good moderator.
Thank you. You're a wonderful guest. So thank you. Congratulations on the book, Rachel, Roy, Ava Dash, and thank you everyone for coming to Book Passage tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.